Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special telecast on NewsX with me, Devika Chopra. Today, remember, we all use the internet almost on a constant basis, be it for work or for personal entertainment. The internet has become a fundamental part of our lives and a fundamental right in today's world. But have you ever wondered about who actually owns the internet or who runs the show? The internet transcends countries and physical borders. With greater access to the internet, nations, governments and civil society also face greater challenges. Different countries and governments have different regulations for the use of the internet. Privacy and data protection, cybersecurity, content regulation amid free speech, protection of intellectual property, these are the various complexities which face a global society dependent upon the internet. And these complexities require a multi-stakeholder approach of seamless coordination between governments, the civil society and tech experts. So who is up to this task? How do they go about it? And what role will India play? It is essentially these complex questions we hope to answer over the next half an hour. Joining me on this special broadcast is Dr. Jaijit Bhattacharya. He is president at the Center for Digital Economy Policy Research and a designate council member of the country codename supporting organization at ICANN. Also joining me is Mr. Anupam Aggarwal, chair of the India Internet Foundation and a board member of the Public Technical Identifiers, once again at ICANN. I thank both Dr. Jaijit Bhattacharya as well as Mr. Anupam Aggarwal for joining us on the broadcast. Jaijit, let me begin this interesting conversation with you. I have to admit, I also don't know, I'm not the domain expert here, but it is really interesting to actually think about who really is responsible for the regulation and governance of the internet today. If you can, Jaijit, begin by shedding some light for our viewers on the same. Who really is running the internet and what are the real day-to-day and other issues that arise with the governance of the internet?
Now, it's a very, very serious question because look at some of these cases as to what will happen if our military is engaged at the borders and somebody goes and deletes the .in domain. Much of the business behind starts collapsing. Or if somebody just cuts off the internet for India as a whole, what happens to our businesses? What happens to our logistics, supply chain? How do we supply to our military and to our banking and to our jobs and work, and how we live and how we communicate over WhatsApp, over Facebook, and making all these internet-based calls? So all of that starts collapsing. So what has really happened is that our lives have got extremely and deeply entwined with the internet, and therefore the question you're asking becomes very, very serious question as to who is then controlling this internet. So the internet started off by being managed by ICANN. I'll not go into the full form of ICANN for now, but ICANN itself was operating under a contract under the Department of Commerce, under the US government. So the US government's Department of Commerce had given a contract to ICANN to run the internet. And that's what really happened for the first couple of decades of the internet. And then countries woke up and realized that, look, if so much is dependent on the internet, then shouldn't we have a say in it?
Yes.
And therefore the concern was that which country should have a say in it? If it's not the US, then which country? And what happens if it's a rogue country? If those countries step in and actually create a problem in the way we run the internet? And therefore, the point that came out of it was that can we have multiple stakeholders running it? So if a country runs it and there is a popular upheaval against that government and the government stops it because of the intervention on the internet, that defeats the purpose of the internet. And therefore, the concept of multi-stakeholderism, that there will be individuals and the civil society and academia coming in and having stakeholders who will then run the internet. And therefore, there is a transition that has happened where ICANN is now run by a board which comes from multi-stakeholders. But also then the next obvious thing that comes in is what really does ICANN do? How does it really run the internet? Does it really put in the cable into your house and that's how it runs? Well, what happens when you type in www.newsx.com, and that's really where the internet starts from. So when you type that, how do you suddenly magically get the NewsX website on your laptop or phone or whatever device you have? is because that domain name, which is newsx.com, which it's called a domain name, is then mapped to a server address which has got a number like 192.268.362. Sorry, it can't be 362, but 250.198. The reason it can't be more than 256 is because of the way the numbering happens, the binary mathematics happens. Without complicating life, essentially the names are then mapped to a number. That number is like the address of a server, which then sends out the pages. And to therefore map this, you need to have servers which tell you what is the mapping.
Yes.
It's almost like saying, where do I live? Here is my name and here is my address. So somebody then connects the name and the address, and that's the server that really tells you what the content of newsx.com lies in. And then they serve that content over a certain protocol, because if I don't understand what you're sending to me as a device, then there's no point in sending that information through. So there are protocols that are laid out as to how the content will be sent and how I will understand that content. This is really what, in a nutshell, ICANN manages. It ensures that domain names are registered. It also ensures that top level domain names are registered. For example, .in is what is called a country code top level domain, or a CCTLD. Similarly, .pk for Pakistan, .us for US, and so on and so forth. Similarly, there are global level top level domains such as .com, .org, and so on and so forth, which are not related to countries.
Right.
So that is also managed by ICANN. And then again, how the addresses are managed, which is called the DNS servers, which are then mapped in a hierarchical manner to global root servers. So there are 13 root servers globally, which manages how the traffic goes around globally. And there are mirrors to it, because if there is too much traffic into one server, then what happens on the roads of Delhi will happen on the internet. There will be a traffic jam. So it is split out. There are mirrors that are created so that there is no traffic jam on one single server. And this entire flow of data and information is what is orchestrated by ICANN.
At the same time, Jaijit, just for the benefit of our viewers, I mean, you have tried to explain it in as simple a term as possible, but what really then is the impact for us on a regular basis as users of the internet, and what is the impact, say, on India also?
So if you see, whenever there are problems within the country, internet is switched off because internet has been weaponized. We have seen cases where in Bangalore there was a story that was spread that the northeastern Indians living in Bangalore are being subjected to violence.
Yes.
And so on and so forth, and it spreads very fast. So there were rumors earlier also, before internet came in, but what internet has done it has accelerated every single narration out there. So very quickly, very fast, a huge amount of misinformation can get spread. So therefore, it is as the government of India, it is the responsibility of the local state police agencies as well as the Indian government to ensure that such misinformation leading to death and destruction does not happen. And therefore, it's important how we manage the internet. Also, in addition, if your language is not in the internet, if Hindi is not written in the internet, if Bangla is not there, if Santali is not there, if many of these other languages that we have is not there on the internet, then those languages will die away. If the Meitei script of the Manipuri is not there on the internet, or the Nagamishi or the Idumishi languages are not there, they will die a certain death. So again, it becomes important to ensure that our culture and the way we live and the way we interact is then also translated to the digital world, which essentially means the internet. And if we do not have a say in doing that, then our cultures and languages and the way we live and what our history is starts diminishing. And therefore, that's another reason why it's important for us on a day-to-day basis to be involved with how internet is working. And also, as I mentioned a little while ago, that everything that we do on a daily basis, the studies, our healthcare, our work, even the way Anupam is dialing into this conversation through a video conferencing, which is essentially internet, all of that is run over internet, and therefore it becomes very important for an ordinary person to feel secure that this is being well managed. Now, the whole process can be weaponized. For example, if India gets cut off from the internet for various reasons. They can be called as a shark attack on the cables. So when there were very few undersea cables connecting India, there was a case where the internet went down for a few days in India because a shark had chewed the cables. Now those situations don't arise anymore because there are multiple undersea cables connecting India to the rest of the world, but there are still ways and means of cutting India off. It could be through cyber attacks, it could be through state-driven deliberate attacks. And again, it becomes important that we have what is called a resilient internet in this country, that even if we are cut off, we should be able to continue our work on a day-to-day basis as if nothing has happened. And therefore, we need to replicate what are called as the root servers, the 13 root servers. So we have a few of them mirrored in India. We should probably mirror all those 13 in India so that we become resilient for doing everything that I just mentioned a little while ago.
At the same time, Jaijit, how you explain it also begs us to ask the question, sometimes we do take the internet for granted, right? As you also mentioned, that it's become such an intrinsic part of our day-to-day lives that we don't really ever think about the internet really shutting down for the entire nation, but keeping some of the global developments in mind, the fact that there are wars that are going on, that there are conflicts and there is chaos in different parts of the world. What role does ICANN play in terms of access, ensuring access to the internet, but also taking care of some of the dangers today that the internet does pose?
So, ICANN's role is actually limited to managing the domain names, as I mentioned, the IP addresses, which is how the domain name maps to an actual server, and the protocols associated with the technology protocols. Obviously, there are committees around which looks at issues like cybersecurity, and also a parallel development, which is a Web 3.0 development, which really doesn't need DNS servers in the way ICANN runs it. So those are parallel technological developments that are happening. But having said that, let's look at, for example, the cyber bombing of the Iranian centrifuges, the nuclear centrifuge at Natanz. It was the first time that a cyber attack led to a physical damage happening. It was almost like the moment when nuclear bomb was put on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now that was when a cyber attack took place and led to a physical damage. We have also seen in the last few weeks where pager bombing happened in against the Hezbollah, where it was a cyber kinetic attack that happened, where cyber triggered actual explosives which were widespread and at a mass scale that was done. We also are aware of concepts such as swarm drones, where millions of drones can be controlled and sent out, driven by AI, which can do devastating harm. You don't need to put a nuclear bomb on a city. The drones, which are micro drones, can actually go and kill each and every person in that city without damaging the city. So the new developments are happening. They are very terrifying in their concept.
Yes.
And these are concepts we had said will happen 15, 20 years ago. We said that from the Center for Digital Economy Policy Research. But at that time, it sounded pretty futuristic. What we are seeing is that future is now. It's here. It's happening. And those are issues that the independent nations and ICANN together has to get together and work them out. These are very difficult problems to solve. ICANN is a body where one can get to talk about these issues, to therefore find out the policies that can work for solving these issues. But these are not easy issues to solve. ICANN is just a platform that helps in solving these issues.
Right, absolutely. Jaijit, I will come back to you in just a moment. I want to bring in Mr. Anupam Aggarwal into the conversation at this point in time. Mr. Aggarwal, I'd like to understand from you as well, sir. Could you tell viewers a little bit more about the public technical identifiers, or the PTI, of which you're a board member?
Absolutely. So PTI is a function of managing the domain names, the IP addresses, and the protocol parameters of internet, which Jaijit talked about at the start, and which are very, very important for continued running of the internet. If we are connected today, if we are talking today, then these three dimensions, which are the domain names, the protocol parameters, and the IP addresses, need to run smoothly. So while ICANN manages the governance of the internet, the real plumbing work happens at PTI. To ensure that the internet works seamlessly as it is working now, and it should be working seamlessly in the future, it is important that these dimensions are taken care of. And this is exactly what PTI does, which is managing the core of the internet. not only just the protocol parameters, domain names, number, resources, but the allied things like managing the DNS root servers, managing the trust on the internet. If ever you have used HTTPS while going to on a website, the trust which is provided by the S, which essentially stands for the security, that is something which is also managed by PTI. So PTI is a critical component in the entire internet ecosystem, managing the core of the internet.
Okay, and is there a relation then between PTI and ICANN?
Yes, so ICANN just was formed in 1998, but internet is far older than that.
Yes.
So when there was no ICANN, John Postel, one of the research scientists from US under the Department of Defense, was managing these things like who will get the IP addresses, how they will get it, who is currently holding what amount of IP addresses, and this entire thing was then given to ICANN in 1998 to manage, but it was still under the Department of Commerce control, and this control was given to the multi-stakeholder community in 2016, and this entire function is now come to PTI. So PTI is an affiliate body of ICANN, wherein the policies are discussed and created within the ICANN ecosystem, and then PTI gets those policies to implement with and to run with. So it is 100% subsidiary of ICANN, wherein there are 5 board members on the board of PTI. One is the CEO of PTI, who is the ex officio member. Then two board members are nominated by ICANN,
Yes.
and then there are 2 other members who are from the community. So,
Right.
and I represent one of the community in the board.
Okay, Mr. Aggarwal, so what really is the strategic plan of PTI then for the next few years?
The strategic plan for next few years is to ensure that the trust on internet remains, and that is one of the first strategic priority for PTI. The second one is to ensure that we monitor and adapt all the security threats and ensure that the internet remains resilient. Resilient for many purposes can be talked about as something which is the ability of a system to come back when it goes into a disaster. But here the idea of resilient is that the internet continues to work the way it is supposed to work. So that is the second most important priority for PTI. The third one is that some of the important services which are being delivered for the people or the netizens. Say for example, if you are booking a domain, the domain needs to work every time you type it on your browser. So
Right.
the service delivery which is managed by PTI needs to be ensured that it is being done on time. And then there are certain parameters to ensure that the PTI itself as an organization works. So there are timing factors, there are SLAs under which if things goes wrong needs to be managed, which we call as operational excellence. And the strategic priority for PTI is then to ensure that we excel in all the operational parameters as well. And then finally the strategic priority is to ensure that ICANN, wherein the governance takes place, where the policies are being made, they get 100% of the input on the ground from the ground to ensure that they create the right kind of policies. So this in more or less are the 5 top strategic priorities for PTI at this moment.
Okay, Mr. Aggarwal, I'd also just like to understand from you then, how do the decisions that are made by PTI really impact India?
So I will take the example which Jaijit said, that say tomorrow somebody wants to say that .in doesn't need to work, and they want to take the .in out of the table wherein all the country code top level domains are there, and this table which ensures that all the CCTLDs work is maintained by PTI. So the function of the PTI is extremely important. While I feel that the policies which are being developed in ICANN are through a multi-stakeholder process, most of the countries are involved in, but it is also the time that where the real plumbing of the internet happens, the countries should start focusing there as well.
Okay, Mr. Aggarwal, I will take a closing comment from you, but I want to bring Jaijit back into the conversation. Jaijit, As far as the internet is concerned, a very interesting conversation we've had. It's given me a lot to think about as well, and hopefully our viewers also. The way we have to also look at the internet today is as a form of global currency. The fact that a country has access to the internet is a big deal. In that context, then, what do you think India needs to do for the future?
So let me go deeper into the problem that you're talking about. If there is services being offered over the net from another country into India and we consume it, who do we pay the taxes to? Will it be the Indian government? Will it be some other government? Why will it be some other government? How do we ensure that those taxes are collected here? The second large issue is, let's say, in terms of privacy that you mentioned in the opening remarks. Internet is a platform where privacy, it's a big violator of privacy, almost by definition. We saw when the privacy of the mighty government of US got violated, we had the WikiLeaks, and we had Julian Assange running from the US government for decades now. So, and very, very sensitive leaks happened about what the US government is doing. Now imagine that happens about individuals, what our health conditions is, what disease we are having, which doctor we are going to. We don't want all of that to be on the net. So it's a significant concern from both an economic perspective as well as an individual safety and security perspective. In fact, most of the harassment cases of women that come from Lucknow, and that's a hard statistics, is now over cyber. It's not offline. It's online harassment that is significantly more than offline harassment. So every form of life is getting impacted now, and therefore your question as to what should the Indian government do, there needs to be a body which continuously looks at all of these issues, because you solve one issue, another one crops up. Just like the example of the pager bombing of Hezbollah, who would have imagined that you'll have cyber and explosives put together and you can kill people at a large scale. So we need to look at these issues both from the personal safety and security issue, which is homeland security or internal security issue, but also in terms of our defense, in terms of how adversaries will attack us. And it's no more an attack which is kinetic in nature. That is, it's not that bombs are thrown and so on and so forth. Let me take the example of the Russia-Ukraine war, which started off on 24th of February 2022. Now, usually before such a land war happens, the day before the adversary nation is pummeled by Air Force. So there's large scale bombing that happens before the army starts moving in. But what happened in this case was large scale cyber attack that happened. So the Russians attacked the cyber network of Ukraine, and that brought down every single system of Ukraine down for hours. And Ukraine had the ability to respond back, and within 6 hours they got their cyber back. But the point is that even warfare and how the strategy of warfare used to be has shifted because of the nature of cyber there is. So from an Indian perspective, we need to look at both internal security, external security, and the fact that there is a serious economic angle to it. There is a serious issue of internet based currencies, in fact, which is cryptos, being misused for purposes other than legitimate trade.
Okay, I have the last few minutes left, and I'm going to split that up between both of our panelists. I just want to understand from both Jaijit as well as Anupam, how do you want your presence then within ICANN and within PTI respectively to bring India's voice to the table? Jaijit, beginning with you.
So clearly, we have seen that India has not been on the high tables of global discussions for quite some time. It's only about 10 to 12 years ago that we really started with a clear strategy and with some bit of an aggression, if I can say, of getting onto the high tables of global conversations. So you will see that Indians have been, and by Indians I mean Indians represented by the government of India, have been elected into various standards bodies, and these standard bodies are important for not just internet but all kinds of technologies. In that context, as Anupam and I are part of the ICANN, and I will be in the next 1 month as a designated council member, we are actually not representing the Indian government. We are representing the interests of our stakeholders. In my case, I'm representing Asia and Australia, and therefore everything that people in this region need is what we'll be representing. which obviously also involves India, which is 16% of the global population, one of the most complex in that sense. Australia only has got 1 or 2 languages. Also, it also has its own complexities in terms of indigenous cultures, but India has got many more indigenous cultures that can get wiped out if we don't support them on the internet. Similarly, there are many other concerns that India has in terms of the top level domains. What should be the top level domain of Gujarat be, of Tamil Nadu be? Will it be in the Tamil script? Will it be in the Devanagari script? Will it be in the Meitei script or the Bangla script, and so on and so forth? So all of those issues needs to be very, very gracefully handled with all the stakeholders being aligned to whatever decision is being taken.
Okay, I leave the last word with Mr. Anupam Aggarwal. Mr. Aggarwal, your thoughts on the same?
So my thought is centered around a couple of key points, one of them being the internet resilience. And the reason why I'm stressing on it is because in last 4 or 5 years, we have been pushed onto the digital bandwagon. 5 years ago, internet was there in the country. People who needed it were using it, but it was not part and parcel of the life the way it is currently. So now, if you are not ensuring that the quality of the internet which every citizen is getting, essentially we are creating digital divide. And that is a much bigger digital divide rather, which was earlier being discussed when people were not having access to internet versus people who were having access to internet. Now the question has transformed wherein people who are not having a quality internet are much more suffering than the people who are having a good quality internet. So resilience of the internet needs to be ensured so that everyone gets a good quality internet at all times, which currently is not the case. If you travel 50 kilometers south of Mumbai or 100 kilometers south of Delhi, the quality of the internet completely changes. Why it changes? There are technical solutions to this problem, and this needs to be implemented. The telcos, the civil society organizations, the technical community, which I represent mostly, those needs to be brought onto the table and have a very concrete discussion that how can we ensure that the quality of the internet is the best for each and every citizen of the country, and they don't face the issue of digital divide. And the second and the final point from my side will be that we need to start participating in the global standardization process. From the point you start going onto the internet, which is like using the HTTP, or you are using a Wi-Fi, everything is a standard. Wi-Fi is an IEEE 802.1 standard. HTTP is IETF standard. We are not represented adequately in this standards developing organizations, and that is the place where the key decisions related to the future of the internet is made. So if we are not there, we will just be catching up with the technology. And that is a game I think which we have done for significant amount of years, and now it is time that we catch up with that game. And those participation will also provide inputs to the government for creating the adequate policies. Otherwise, what we are currently doing is getting on to the second or third hand data and trying to develop something based on that. Whereas there are tools and mechanisms, and it is being supported currently by the government of India, wherein there are projects which give the ground level data to the government, and I am sure the future will have policies based on the ground data which we are currently having.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.